Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on CK-12 for science teachers. I'm Lindsay, and my colleague Katie and I will be running today's webinar. We have lots to cover today, but before we get into the core content, I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with the Zoom webinar platform. You should see two different windows as you're using Zoom today, one that's for Q&A and one that's for chat. During today's presentation, whenever you have a question about CK-12, please post it in the Q&A window. We're going to pause for a Q&A session after each major topic to address any questions that have been submitted. The chat window is a place for community conversation. We'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves. If you're an educator, feel free to share your state or country, maybe even your district or the subject that you teach. Just make sure in the chat window that you're sending any general posts to all panelists and attendees, not just to CK-12 or panelists, if you want everybody to be able to see it. Also, while we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, if you're having any trouble with your video or your sound, please let us know in one of these windows. So now that we've gone over the logistics for the webinar, we want to find out a little bit more about you. So we're going to launch a poll right now. There it is. You can see it on your screen. We have two questions for you. The first is to get an idea of how long you've been using CK-12. The second question is asking how familiar you are with CK-12's tools and resources. We're going to check out these answers, and this is going to help us kind of go forward with this webinar and deliver the content that's most relevant to you. You'll notice that on the second question, you are able to choose more than one answer. So I'm going to pause for a second and we'll see how you guys are doing with responding. We are waiting on just a few more answers. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and close that poll. Thank you for answering those questions. And we've got several people in the room here who are from the CK-12 team and are going to be reviewing those answers to help direct our conversation today. So before we move into the content, I want to make sure you guys are all familiar with the CK-12 Foundation. Our foundation, founded in 2007, is a leading nonprofit organization dedicated to improving student learning by increasing access to educational materials through the Flexbook platform and concept-based modalities. CK-12 offers free, high-quality, standards-aligned open content through an integrated set of tools for learning, including digital textbooks, concept-based learning resources, simulations, interactive practice, and more. And like I said, we give it all away for free. Our core content and curriculum is for middle school and high school math and science, with some K-5 math practice and videos. However, with the addition of donated resources and user-created content, you'll also be able to find books for other subjects and levels, especially related to social studies and English. So although it is offered for free, when you use a CK-12 resource, you can trust that it's the highest quality. CK-12 is used across the world by students, teachers, and districts because it is the best content, not because it is free. We visit all sorts of schools, including ones that aren't bound by any budget constraints, and they're choosing CK-12 because they know it's what's best for student learning. Our content has been developed by hundreds of people with PhDs, people who are professors and teachers, authors, NASA scientists, and other subject matter and domain experts over the past 10 years. Our content is accessible. We worked hard to make all of our content available across every platform in both print and digital format. CK-12's global impact is incredible, with over 15 million active users, which I think is a number just from like last month alone. represented in over 200 countries worldwide. So, who are the faces behind this organization? Believe it or not, we are a small team of about 35 people in Palo Alto, California, with a few colleagues working outside of California, including those who are in our India office. We're all here because we love our team and we love what we do, and we're excited to give people all over the world access to free quality content and resources. So with that, we're going to get started with today's core presentation, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Katie.
Thanks, Lindsay, for that lovely introduction to CK-12, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. Specifically during this webinar, we're going to be covering strategies related to the following topics: concept-based learning in Flexbooks, so bite-sized chunks of content supported with varied modalities and our full textbooks; customizing content, so tailoring CK-12 or other users' content to meet your needs; and then groups and assignments, creating assignments, customizing assignments, seeing student progress, and integrating with learning management systems. Now, there are a number of different ways to learn any concept on CK-12 because we enrich every concept with modalities to help meet students' needs in the best way possible. These core modalities include text, physics and chemistry simulations, our interactive PLIX, videos, practice, and even real-world applications.
Katie, to bring this all together, I think now's a good time to show a quick, minute and a half clip of a teacher who we were proud to meet recently, named Chris Pickens. And he's using CK-12's Flexbooks, our PLIX, our simulations to differentiate learning in his 6th grade science classroom in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
I got started with CK-12 as our school district went through an adoption. This is our CK-12 rocket simulation that we're going to be working on today. The level of engagement with the Chromebooks and the CK-12 is just amazing. It's changed my career. I think the students can sense that. I'm excited to come into school every day because I'm learning something new every day. I didn't realize that something this simple as a Chromebook and some online textbooks could change the way that I teach that much, but it's been pretty much a door that has opened that I can't close anymore. But I can tell you, this is certainly a lot more exciting way to teach. The level of engagement with the kids is phenomenal. I can have a variety of students doing a variety of different things. I can have advanced students working on things. I can have students on IEPs working on things, all in the same class, where in years past when somebody would ask me to do some of those things, I was like, what? I can't do all that. I can't record all that. Everybody's gonna do the same thing. With CK-12, I can have a variety of assignments going at the same time, in the same class. I'm not stressed. The students aren't stressed because they're kind of getting some instruction at their level. And so I just think everybody's much happier to come into class. Students should be leaving school saying, oh, that was fun.
Thanks. So as you can see, Chris used a number of different resources across his classroom. And the question is where to find these. When you go to ck12.org, you'll find an educational platform providing standards-aligned STEM resources, primarily, that can be accessed anytime, anywhere, and on any device for free. As you can see, there are a ton of resources on CK-12, so often the question is where to start. When I work with educators, both new and those who've used our site, and it seems like we have a good mix of users on this webinar today, I find that the best way to answer the question on where to start is based on what they're looking for when they access CK-12. So are they looking for resources related to a particular topic? So are they teaching nucleic acids, Newton's law, life on Earth, chemistry? And you can do that via search in the science branches. Or are they looking for a particular type of resource? So Flexbooks textbooks for biology class, simulations for physics class, maybe an NGSS aligned book or something like that. And so we have some browsers and options for that as well. So I think thinking about those two goals in mind, either type of resource or other thing, let's go straight to our site and see what that looks like. So today's webinar is really going to be kind of a quick hit on the CK-12 platform and really a focus on strategies for teaching based on using CK-12 resources. So to kind of keep you from having to write them all down as we go, we're going to share that resource, and I think Star is sharing that with you right now. We kind of summed up all those strategies, so you have that reference, and we'll share that again in our follow-up email tomorrow. But we're just going to kind of talk about those strategies, and I'm not going to go into a ton of depth on the actual pieces of CK-12 and how to do things on CK-12 within this webinar. We have other webinars that go into that how-to, but really kind of thinking about rethinking your class based on what CK-12 offers. So the first thing we said was this idea of searching for resources for a particular topic. So the first thing that you might do is you might search for heat and temperature. So if we do that, you can see a number of things come up here. You could sort by grade resources, by kind of sections within science, or even the type of resources, those modalities that we talked about, the different types of modalities. But if I pick the first one, let's say I'm covering heat, temperature, and thermal energy, then this would take me to the concept page. And this brings me to a number of different options. Because it's a physics concept, I'm also going to see this simulation in here, our interactive PLIX, some practice, video, read, and I can even sort by kind of at grade or maybe some basic options if a student is struggling with a particular thing. So there's some extra videos that might be helpful. And then our community contributed content. So if other users have created content and it looks like they maybe made a study aid that might be helpful for this particular topic. So definitely options for kind of accessing resources there. So finding resources based on topic by search, or if I use this little logo to go back to the home page, I can also browse. So these are the subjects that I have. I can see all subjects, and I can, let's say, go into chemistry. Now, once I get to this page, you'll see that I have a number of options for kind of the different larger topics within chemistry. And then as I scroll down, you'll see some different choices. And I can click on any one of these and expand it. And this is something new. So if you've been using CK-12 for a while, we redid this kind of flow this summer so that you see the biggest topics first, and then you can expand within there. And then just like clicking the concept from the search option, I can access that via this browse option as well. And so thinking about strategies based on, as Chris said, all of these different resources that CK-12 offers. One suggestion might be to have students each pick a different type of resource and review it and come up with notes and then compare them and create a set of class notes as they're working their way through. Or, they could all pick a topic and build a video and then maybe add that and publish it under community contributed and kind of continue to add to the resources available for others, as well as making it a great assignment for them. Back on the home page, if I'm looking for a particular topic as a teacher, I'll see the standards option here. So I can click on Next Generation Science Standards, and I can actually pick topics here. So let's say middle school Earth and Space Sciences. And I could even go into Eclipse options, and once again, I get to that concept page and I get that choice. In that top right, you'll see the concept map. Because we redid our system, that's under construction right now. But once that's up and running again, it might be a great way to build a unit with a colleague in science or across disciplines, because that allows you to kind of link different ideas and different concepts together. And so that's a great way to kind of build related topics and a broader unit together. So different things to think about as you're thinking about the different modalities as we work our way through. The other option is to talk about types of resources specifically. So if I was going to go back to the home page, I could browse. If we're talking about standards, I could actually browse teacher standards like this using our Flexbook standards aligned option. So I could pick NGSS. I could pick a particular topic, let's say life science for 8th grade. And that would come up with the book that we have, or books if there are more available for that area. And then you'll see the attached NGSS standards for that particular topic. So I could find those. I could browse by branch. So let's pick a different branch. Let's say expand this. You can see all the different options. We actually just did K-5 science books recently, so that might be something new. But I can look at biology and I can click on the Flexbook textbook link, and that will give me all the textbooks that I can explore. So you might see CK-12 books, books donated to us that we decided we wanted to include on our site, community contributed books we'll talk about in a second. But you can kind of see English, and there might even be a Spanish translation there as well. So definitely options for finding stuff. And then the last choice for kind of finding a Flexbook might be to go back to that homepage and explore our schools option. So if I click on schools here, you'll see a bunch of different schools. I can sort by state, or we just started an international option for those of you kind of out of the country. But let's say I picked Florida. And so you'll see kind of all of the books that users have created or customized from Florida as you go through here. And one of the school districts down there, Polk County, actually is the first person that kind of started looking and working with us to create some of that elementary science content, and they took our middle school content and adapted it. So whether you're looking at our stuff or theirs, those are great options. Now, a cool strategy might be to actually browse the schools near you and say, oh, I'm actually right near Polk County in Florida. So maybe I'm going to contact them, see who the name on this book is, Dr. Milt Hewling, and say, can I go talk to him and understand what that process looked like and how they customize their books and what I might want to take into account. For any particular book, you can actually open that book, and in any core section, so let's see, I say types of energy. If I look in here, we have this highlighting option. So a student could actually go through and say, what's the key thing? So I might want to know that energy is the ability to do work. And I could even add a note to that and say, add to study guide. And so we've had different teachers use this for highlighting main ideas and details in different colors, for kids to kind of actively take notes in their class, maybe creating a summary, and all of those resources are down at the bottom, those notes and highlighting that they actually used in there. A couple more strategies to think about for books are using CK-12 as a pre-lesson. So saying, before we start this lesson, I want you to read this particular page on CK-12, and then kind of go from there in your particular lesson. And the last strategy that we're going to talk about today is this idea of, I showed you a Spanish option for some of them, but we also have the option, because we're a website and we can embed other pieces, we actually worked to include Google Translate options on there. And so you can actually translate this, let's say, to Japanese, and then the whole page gets translated. So a user that might not speak English as their primary language could get a pretty good idea of what's being covered by doing that translate option, and maybe a parent could help their kids or something like that. So we're going to switch this page back to English so I can read it, and then we're going to continue. So those are some strategies for kind of working with our Flexbooks. Some more strategies for browsing content and using content by different types would be to look at our options for simulations and PLIX, which are our interactives. So if we looked at our simulations, you can filter simulations here by different topics as you go through. So let's say I wanted to cover stuff on simple machines, and then I could pick a particular simulation. And our simulations include some sort of guiding question and maybe a video introduction, and then our sandbox environment. And these are great to kind of help students explore a concept. One of the things for science, one of our physics teachers that now works with us says she loves these because they often dispel misconceptions. So students can actually try things out and say, oh, that doesn't work the way I thought it worked. And they can see those kind of different samples. We've actually created, if you join us for our Sims and PLIX webinar later this month, we have a whole sheet of some common misconceptions that CK-12 simulations address, and we can kind of share that with you as well in our follow-up. But they can do that. We're going to talk about assignments, so this assigned to class option in the top will be super relevant as we go through. But then they can kind of, even as a strategy, maybe make your own questions. So you can create a new question and add it to this different slider-based question, or you can add another real-world application and kind of add those pieces in here. So that might be something useful to do as an activity for your class. If we look at kind of back to our homepage and we say, okay, we're going to go back and we're going to actually see the difference between these complicated systems for physics and chemistry or our PLIX, which are kind of little simple interactions as we work our way through. So let's say I was teaching chemistry and I wanted to work my way through here. You can kind of browse some different options. You can open up a PLIX. And then all of our PLIX, for those of you guys, hopefully some of you have explored them, but you have some sort of exploration as you work your way through and kind of scale, measure. You can answer some questions, and they're really a tool. So if students are just randomly guessing, which I'm doing, they can actually see the correct answer. And even maybe go from here and have a discussion. So these actually link you out to our PLIX Cafe, which allows for this discussion. And so one thing you could do is you could use a PLIX or a sim as a warm-up for class or an exit slip. So kind of using these to start something or to test for understanding. Or you could create this open discussion question as a journal assignment and either have kids do that in class or kind of link out to the PLIX corner from here. So this would take them to that cafe and that conversation that's happening about that. So all of these different things, we're going to go back to that homepage for a second. And the last type of resource would be that adaptive practice, which we're going to talk about later in this webinar. But all of these really allow for the idea of a paperless classroom because they're available across devices. Kids can work in alternative learning environments and test things out in different spaces, and even access some of this content offline so that they can easily work with it and go from there. So hopefully that kind of gives you a starting place for different options. And it looks like we have one question as we are going through. So let's see if we can pop that open. And we have a question that says, can anyone provide more info on online textbooks supported by simulations and videos? So we actually embed a lot of our videos in our textbooks. So if we looked at some different examples, kind of as we do the customization piece, you'll get to see some of those parts. And you can actually pull from any of our simulations. Each one of these, if you link into it, has a unique URL at the top. So I can share any of these via this green little share a plane, and it will pop up the option for this piece right here. Let's see if we can get that. Looks like I'm not quite clicking on it right there, but usually that will give you a pop-up window to share, but I can just copy this URL at the top there and then go from there and attach that within a book as we customize it. So definitely CK-12 allows you to do that. If you're looking for other questions or other resources, that might be a great thing to put on our cafe. So let me go show you kind of our Jumpstart Cafe for a second, which we will do again. We'll kind of talk about later on. But these are different forum discussions, and that if you're looking for other resources as well and kind of collaboration, you might want to jump in there and ask some questions like that. So looks like that's it for questions, and we'll kind of move on from there.
Yeah, please, as Katie's giving you a demonstration, there's going to be some things that, she's covering a lot of information very quickly. So if you need to see something again, or if you need her to further expand on anything, the Q&A window is a great place for you to ask questions. Don't be afraid to type in there. We're going to pause again here in a few minutes and try to do another round of Q&A. Right now, though, I'm going to steal the screen back. And Katie just showed you the translate button, which is pretty powerful. I've been traveling around, like I said, and meeting different teachers across the country, and met Dr. Cynthia Ontiveros of El Paso School District in Texas. And she talked a lot about parents and the power of, using Translate and having them access content. So I think it's really interesting, and here's just a short clip from her.
I met a parent who was struggling with supporting his daughter because he did not speak English very well. So I brought up the CK-12 on my iPad. I quickly showed him how he can change the language, and he was nearly in tears, and he felt just so excited that now that he could help his daughter, which was emotional for me too, knowing that this is what CK-12 is about. This is what we want our parents, our language learners, no matter where they come from, no matter what language they speak, they need to find a place in our classroom, and CK-12 helps us to do that.
Okay, so we're going to start talking about customizing content. Now that you've seen kind of the overview of the resources on our site and things that you can use for your science class, a lot of that is grab and go, but you might want to get into customization to make it even more powerful for your own situation. So we're going to talk about 3 topics here. Katie's going to quickly review the CC by NC license, what that means with our CK-12 Flexbooks and how that applies to you. We're going to talk about our Flexbooks, all the different capabilities briefly, how you can rename, you can reorder, you can delete, you can add, you can edit, really take CK-12's content or start from scratch with your own and create a book that is meaningful for you and your students and your community. And then we're also going to talk about user-generated content. Katie previewed that from the schools page, but not only do we have CK-12 content, but we have users who've created some really awesome resources that they're sharing on our site as well. So Katie, maybe talk to them about this license to get started.
Sure. So everything that you can do on our site and kind of all of those community contributed pieces that you've been seeing so far is possible, and you're able to really adapt and share those resources because we're under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 3.0 license. So that's something you're going to want to know so that you know what you can post on our site and what you can do with the information on our site. But you can find out more about that on our site as well as kind of through Creative Commons, and that will help you figure out usage and giving appropriate credit as you work. So I think with that kind of starting framework and talking about kind of customizing and creating stuff, let's jump into seeing what that looks like. And we are doing an entire webinar on Tuesday on how to edit and customize Flexbooks, kind of all of the basics. So this is more that quick overview and strategy based. So just let us know if there's something you have questions on, you want us to cover more either throughout this webinar or at the end when we stay on and answer anything else. But let's say I pick the topic physical science. And we have users from all over the world, all over the country, and really kind of saying, how do I take this content and make it even more specific and even more relevant for my students? Plus, I used to teach high school and I never taught a textbook from cover to cover. So really going into one of these and saying, do I really need this entire book in this whole section? I can actually go in and just change it and make it what I want it to be. So let's say I customize this, and I'm going to go back for a second just so that you can see how easy it is to start this process again. So I'm looking at something I want to customize, whether that's a CK-12 book or a user book, and I can click this little customize option on the left. And then I could add kind of a demo for October 5th, just so I can keep track of what's happening. But you could rename it with your school name, kind of whatever you wanted in that particular piece. And let's say I wasn't going to cover energy in this kind of short class that I was teaching for a summer program or something. You can simply remove an entire chapter or a section within a chapter by clicking that X. Yep, I want to remove that section. You can always add it back in later from our original book. You could do the same thing within a chapter by expanding it and doing that piece. And let's say you were going to talk about motion and forces within this. Maybe you decided to do speed before direction for some reason. You can just adjust sections of your book or even whole chapters by simply dragging that, and it renumbers everything and makes it kind of do what you want to do there. And you can even add content here. And once again, we're not going to go into all the specifics for this, but the idea is that you can actually edit this content. So one strategy is to really take control of what you present to students by reordering, by limiting what they have to kind of filter out, all this extra stuff that they're not covering. And I can even go in and actually rewrite content within this. So let's say I open this section on distance. It's going to open that page, and it's going to allow me to start editing that particular read as we work our way through. So this is similar to kind of a standard word editing browser in terms of options that you have. So it looks like it's just loading for a second. And then it will take me to that page. I can rename it if I wanted to. I could leave it as is if I wanted to keep the title that was there. And once I'm in there, I can do a lot of different things. So you'll see your standard editor up here. I can go through, I can actually read this content. I could adjust stuff, talk about also, and then add in information. I can add in images. So by clicking here and uploading an image that I have rights to use, there's a review. There might even be resources. So here's a case where if I click Edit Embedded, I can actually preview that video and see what it looks like. Or I could have looked at it as is. But our customization really allows you to put in the resources, those links to simulations, those video components to kind of really make it what you want it to be for a student. And even differentiate it, create personalized reading materials, choose the content, basic, advanced, at grade to help differentiate as a starting place. I even had a school really take the core content in science and rewrite it at a reading level because they were working with students who were struggling with reading. And all of a sudden, these kids were willing to talk out loud and read their textbook in class. And really kind of seeing that difference made a ton of change in the environment of the class and how it worked. The other advantage, if we kind of go, let's see, we kind of can go back to our home page on another tab for a second. If I was going to look at that schools and that user-generated content there, really pulling that and collaborating. So these schools that are publishing there, a lot of them have started creating core common curriculum for a school or even a whole district. And that's a great opportunity for districts to provide common resources for new teachers and even lead to enhanced collaboration. We talked about with some of the districts how their professional development had really changed because all of a sudden they were building content together. They were talking, what goes in grade 8 versus what goes in grade 7 and really collaborating and understanding what they were teaching even more. And that's something that's great just to see kind of as an organic component of working with the tools that they were given on CK-12. So I'm going to pause for 2 seconds because once again, I'm showing you customization, but you don't have to do any editing. You could pull a resource another school has made. You could pull the book kind of as is and use it without any changes on it. But if you want to do this, you can make any of these customizations. And whether you choose to do that or not, you could even use this kind of like in place of a lecture and have students read it and check out the video and do the attached practice. So anything that's kind of a concept-based book will have a tag to practice, and it will actually allow them, in addition to kind of the questions in here, they can use our adaptive practice system. So that might help engage students. A couple other pieces to think about are kind of this idea of, we can insert images, videos. If you're in physics or some math area where you need a lot of formatting, you could click on our math editor and create equations that were formatted accordingly. So all of these things we go into more depth in, but definitely things to kind of just start exploring and checking out. And as you worked your way through here, you could create either within a section or as separate sections in a book, more of a digital playlist, really saying, I want this multimedia, I want this practice, I want links out to other resources, whatever that looks like. Another strategy is to have students do that. Have students say, okay, I'm going to give you the book that you're working off of. I'm going to give you the lesson I made for a class. And now I want you to go in and I want you to write the summary in here. And I want you to create some extra resources and add them in. And then each kid could take a different section and you could put it together as a whole book, or you could have them kind of keep their own notes and their own resources in their own library. And that would kind of pull it all together. They could add their own notes and figures for science class. Another strategy or assignment is the idea of translating Flexbooks. So we showed you the option at the bottom to translate using Google Translate, but you could even have students kind of take this and translate it themselves if they're fluent in another language. And then we encourage you to republish that, and then another student can use that reference as you work your way through. In here, kind of this one has a resource video at the end. Maybe have a student make a video that goes with this that summarizes it all, and they can include it here. And then if you actually, you can keep this as a draft, finalize it so other people can see the updates. But either way, as I work my way through, whatever I'm doing with that material, once it's published, other people can see it out there, and then that finalize will show those updates each time you finalize new changes. But I can always go to my library afterwards and pull up all those resources. So let's see if I click on that. You'll see it save that distance demo. Click on my library. Here are my 2 new resources for science. And I can even create new different types. So whether that is a video that I'm going to upload, or maybe have students create real world applications for a topic. And that might help them kind of analyze and evaluate and create content related to a particular piece. So sort of all different strategies and recommendations based on this idea of customization. So I'm happy to pause for a minute, and if there's questions on actually how to customize, or questions on finding stuff from schools, please feel free to post those in Q&A, because I know that I'm really focusing on how to rethink your class in this, but not necessarily focusing on all of the nitty-gritty little pieces on how to within our site. So feel free to post that.
And let me just chime in with a couple of things too. In the chat window, do make sure that you're changing who you're sending your message to all panelists and attendees. Some of you introduced yourselves and you just sent it to all panelists, so we're the only ones who can see it here in CK-12. So if you wanted to join in on the conversation, try to remember to change that to all panelists and attendees so everybody can see it. And Katie, maybe you didn't see this last this last comment come in, but one of our users said that the math editor looks really useful. So obviously appreciated that demo. Let's see, we got something that just came into Q&A. The question is, would you be able to embed other things besides pictures and videos? Like I have a ton of videos on Edpuzzle that allows me to ask questions while students watch my flipped classroom videos. Would I be able to embed that?
So if you look at this, I can go back in, I finalized this, but there's nothing final on CK-12. I can always go back and kind of edit and update and change as the years go on. When I want to insert a new multimedia piece, make sure if you're seeing this grayed out, it's probably because you're in a header section. So just make sure you're in kind of your regular text area, and then I can click this embed media. Anything where you have an embed code, our system will allow you to physically embed it. So I've actually done this with a Google presentation before. In one of our Flexbook webinars from the summer, I kind of demoed that because Google presentations allow you to share an embed code from there. YouTube easily gets an embed code. So if you have that embed code and you can put it within here, then you can physically embed that within our system and make sure that kind of you're putting stuff in there that is going to last, that isn't a copyright issue. We've had teachers kind of embed videos from YouTube and then they get pulled off YouTube. So just kind of think about the resources and how long they're going to last as you embed them within our system. But you definitely can embed physically based on that choice if you have an embed code to paste within there.
Okay. Troy said, thank you for answering that question. Yeah, the embed code is really powerful. Anything with an embed code hopefully will work with the site. Without any other questions coming in at the moment, let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen back, and we're going to go into a section that I think is very exciting that's talking about how to use different groups and assignments on our site. So I'm going to share this back. And like I said, we're going to briefly go through some of the tools for creating assignments for your science classes. And Katie's going to be showing you these features. A lot of these features we talk about in webinars that could last a full hour just on any one of these topics. This is going to be a high-level overview to show you the different capabilities on the site. So we're going to show you the difference between a class group and a study group and how you might want to start getting students into those groups. We're going to show you our adaptive practice system and how that works and how it makes recommendations and adjusts the levels of questions. And we're going to show you kind of what a report looks like to go with that. And then we also do have some capabilities with learning management systems. So we're going to pretty briefly just talk about the different types of integration that we have with those systems. So Katie, if you want to go ahead and share your screen again, I'm sure they're interested in starting with probably groups of maybe the difference between study groups and classes.
Sure, I'm happy to kind of share those different pieces and we can go from there. If you go back up kind of either from the home page or any of these different pages, you can click on this groups option right here. And so if you really explore these different pieces, you can kind of add a new group. This is directly from groups or from your dashboard. And I can go in here and I can create a new group. And the biggest thing that you want to think about for those groups is whether or not you want this to be a class or a study group. So the thing about study groups is that study groups really allow everyone to share resources within there. So that's something that might be really helpful. If you want to facilitate collaboration for student projects, you could kind of encourage them to create a study group where they could share resources on CK-12. They could talk to each other about kind of next steps on that project. Or you could create learning circles that way with study groups and help them answer each other's questions and go from there. And then the other way to use study groups is this idea of collaboration with colleagues. So let's say you're all creating a resource together and you want to kind of share ideas and different pieces. You could use that study group to have a discussion and to share resources. So definitely check that particular piece out. For the most part, our users are going to use the class option, because that has the added component that there's one teacher and they're leading a class and they can assign homework to the members of that group. They can track student progress. They still have the option for class discussions, but the teacher is the only one that can share resources. So they can share the book or a PLIX or something that they want within that piece. But the students can't just start adding 1,000 different resources that they come across on the site to that group. So that's kind of the biggest difference in some of the strategies in terms of using a study group. And then if we looked into a particular class group, so let me close this up and kind of do a class that I've actually been working with before. So in that class group, for a study group, you wouldn't see this assignment and report option on the left, but you'd see all the rest of those choices, the shared resources, the Q&A discussion that you might have that we just talked about, as well as kind of assignments and reports. So you saw the quick assign option from within a simulation. That same quick assign is available on different pages. And then you can kind of actually create assignments from here if you wanted to search this way. And I can actually, you'll see I've assigned a bunch of these, but then I've also maybe assigned ones to other groups that I want to then assign within here. So different choices. One strategy that and kind of way that teachers use our groups is to actually create classes, partly a class group for each class period that they have. So as the classes maybe get off sync with days off or different pieces, they can assign different parts there. The other option is to actually create groups that are not specifically your physical class, and maybe create a group of kids that are struggling with a topic, and then you can assign them extra practice, or a class group for a set of kids that need more challenging work. So definitely options kind of to break up classes. They don't have to specifically be your physical class. Another thing that you can do is really use that discussion board as an assignment. So if I went back to Q&A, I could actually have kids post questions on there as their assignment. And then as the second part of that assignment, maybe either post a question or answer someone else's question. And either one of those would be valid. And that would help encourage discussion and encourage them to support each other as they work their way through. So if we went back to, let's say, kind of the simulation up here, this assigned a class option, whether I do it from there, you'll see I can assign it directly to any of the classes that I already have in here. if I was going to do this from maybe a textbook, so let's say I picked a topic, chemistry, I went into a book and a section, kind of going from here. I could pick an area and I could assign a particular read as I went from here. For our ones that aren't tagged directly, we have kind of two levels of content. So you'll have like our original books that have multiple concepts, and they'll show you related content here, or we have ones that are specifically tied to concepts, and they would have the specific practice and the other modalities tagged accordingly. But either way, you can assign to class. You'll either see it as this little kind of clipboard icon or an assign to class option on the left. And a great strategy is to really flip your classroom. So you could assign a video, a simulation, a PLIX, a read as the homework. And then when you get in class, start a discussion, do a lab, have a group activity or something like that. You can also assign work that you covered in class to kids who are absent and share that with them and make it so that they can make up the content that's assigned from them. If we were going to look at the actual practice assignment versus kind of these other modality options, you could browse it through adaptive practice and you could pick this topic. So let's say we picked life science, and then I could kind of scroll through any topics for life science, could pick one of them and then go through here and maybe just say, okay, what do I want to cover? If I've done any work on it already, it will show me my percentage. It would do the same for students, and they can actually self-study as well. So you'll see here ways to learn, kind of resources for them. Once they've done some practicing, so I could keep practicing and kind of see stuff. If they're getting things wrong, then, just kind of guessing as they go through. Our system will actually make recommendations for them and kind of pop up this, maybe we can, I got one right there and another one right, kind of, it will up the level of stuff. And if they just start guessing again, then it will actually kind of pop up those recommended components. So you'll actually see some of those resources as you go through here and kind of work with students. Maybe they get a hint, maybe they get some other piece, and here's the resources that would pop up if they were struggling to kind of see some other options. So lots of different things to kind of think about in terms of helping students maybe fill in holes or gaps as they're struggling. You could assign work to them to go from here. They can submit that work and then see their practice score. You kind of get those remediation topics that they might need with. You could use this as a warm-up or an exit ticket. Kind of pre-assess students and see what they understand already before you start a unit. And then kind of this comprehension check as you work your way through. The other thing is really kind of looking at these reports. So they have the amount they got right, the time they spent, their best streak was 3, so maybe they kind of were starting to guess as they work their way through. You can actually see the answers. So if I saw this from a student, I'd say, hey, you started putting random strings of letters in here. So what were you doing, kind of just guessing and doing things as you worked your way through? Or maybe I got this right, but this, so let's review these areas. And really using this as a self-assessment, which is great for competency-based education as well, kind of saying, okay, students can get through this and master this topic and move on from there. A couple things to note, from here or from the practice page within a concept page, I have the option to customize. And that's really another whole webinar, so we're not going to go into that right now, but you're welcome to check that out and kind of think about creating quizzes. Students could actually submit questions and you could customize them and digitize them in our system and use them as a review or even as a quiz for students. And then using kind of this report to help them as you move forward. So once again, I'm not going into the nitty-gritty of the pieces, but just giving you a lot of different ideas to think about and kind of go back to, as you say, how do I rethink my class now that I have access to these pieces?
Okay, to kind of help tie this all together, I'm going to steal the screen back and I want to show you a quick video from Director of Curriculum and Assessment, Dr. Mike Nelson. He and his team have used the flipped classroom model with their students in Coeur d'Alene. And so here's a quick clip about their kind of new way of doing homework. So let me share my screen, and here it is.
In Coeur d'Alene School District, we believe that homework doesn't necessarily have to be done at home. So what we ask students to do is either use their phones or other devices to research a particular topic in advance at the end of the school day, on their way into class, or possibly even from their bedroom, and then spend most of the time in the classroom dealing with rich conversation, working on our simulations, doing an interactive activity or a lab. When you have only 50 minutes in a classroom period, it doesn't always give you the opportunity to do that rich, engaging instruction. What CK-12 has allowed us to do is use the flipped classroom model to be able to have more time for that discussion to take place.
So that's a great option. I know we have one question in Q&A. I promise we'll get to that as we work our way through. But I wanted to just kind of take this minute. Mike Nelson talked about flipping classrooms. We've been talking about strategies for a while. So before we kind of flip back into some of that strategies and into kind of sharing that site, I want to show you a recap of our strategies as we talked. I kind of told you them based on the topics within CK-12, but I want to recap them based on how an educator might think. So one area is strategies based on a school or a state. So kind of using that idea of collaborating within a school or across school and sharing resources with others. In planning specifically for your class, so like flipping your class, customizing Flexbooks, building that playlist, going from there. Creating various groupings as you're kind of planning out what you're going to do and what you're going to assign, and maybe using practice as a pre-assessment. And then within class, you're kind of making assignments, whether you're using things as a warm-up or a wrap-up, a PLIX discussion, having students journal answers, using highlighting tools, all sorts of different options, like as you're working and the students are working. And then all these ways that students can actually take control and invest in their own education and make a video, customize a Flexbook, review different areas, create class notes, kind of self-assess, practice different places, translate, that's great for parents too, and like really use the resources that are available from CK-12 as you work your way through. So a couple of places that we just kind of briefly mentioned in different places. I mentioned you can view the Flexbooks offline, I think, but let's talk about where you can access that. So tools and apps definitely are places. We have 3 apps at this point in time. So we have a Flexbook app, which allows for both online and offline access. So when I was talking about the idea of looking at different classroom environments and really kind of accessing stuff within class, off class, outside of class, using that practice app might be great on a tablet or a phone for kids to practice. The physics sims, everyone can download offline. So if you have network issues within your school, you can actually download them on an iPad before class, and then the kids could access them. Similarly for the Flexbooks, they could access them both online and offline as you're working your way through. So check out those 3 apps, and you can find those at the footer. So when I go back live in a few minutes to answer some more questions, I'll make sure to point that out. We also always get questions about LMS integration, especially when talking about assignments. So right now, you should know that the top 3 there, Edmodo, Canvas, and Schoology, we have what's called grade passbacks. You can actually see work that you've assigned from CK-12 and student progress within those systems. We're currently working on the same thing for Google, so that will be up and running this fall. So we can kind of talk about what that looks like when that goes live. And then there's some content in some other areas and direct links and logins. So check all of those integration pieces out kind of on our site as we go through.
So obviously this has been a lot of information to digest. Our goal today was to give you an overview of all the things that you could start exploring to help you in your science classes. Just one more link to throw at you in case you're not totally overwhelmed yet is ck12.org/overview. This is a new link, a new page that we've developed that has just a brief overview of all of our resources and our core products, and then some videos that have a lot of different voices talking, administrators, teachers, students, about that tool and how you might, begin to use it in your classroom. So this is a great page to share with others. If you're excited about what you saw today and you want to take it back to your department or show it to, your principals, your district coordinators, this might be a good page just to give them that overview of the types of things that we covered in this session today. I also want to make sure that we encourage you to join the CK-12 Cafe, specifically the Jumpstart for Educators Cafe. Cafe is our name for forum. This is a discussion forum. It's starting to get going again here as the new school year is underway, but we'd really like for this to be a place for you to network, have great conversations, and as you have questions for either the CK-12 team or the larger CK-12 community, post them here, and let's have some conversations. One specific thread on this forum right now, we've got an awesome PLIX team here who is working on developing interactives and engaging students. And so they want some teacher feedback. They want educators to help make suggestions about their next math and science PLIX of the week questions that they post in the PLIX corner. So you'll find on this thread a place where you can submit what you would like to see with your students, and our team will work on developing that. So that's pretty exciting. We are approaching the hour mark. All of our webinars usually go about an hour, and then we always stay on and answer questions after the hour mark. So for instance, we've got something sitting in the Q&A right now. I'm going to do a little bit more wrap-up information, but I just want to assure everybody that we stay on, especially if you have kind of questions that you don't think everybody would benefit from the answers. At the end of the webinar is always a great time to ask those, and we will get to those. But right now, I just want to remind you, our webinars page does show upcoming webinars. We're working on our schedule for past October, but for this month, we have the Flexbooks 101. That's the session you want to attend if you're interested in using our Flexbooks. If you're thinking about customizing, if you want to go in depth for an hour session on, all the different ways to customize and deliver those to your students, that's your session. If you were intrigued by what you saw with our simulations and our PLIX interactives, this is a great hour-long webinar that shows you all of the bells and whistles and all of the tools that will help you successfully integrate those in your classroom. And then you may have heard that we had a CK-12 certified educator program. Right now, it's just a summer program. So this past summer, we ran a program and we certified educators. You can see a record of what happened at ck12.org/certified2017. There's a lot of good information on that page that might help you as you're getting to know CK-12. And there at the bottom of the page are all of the archived webinars from this past summer. We're already planning next summer and what our program's going to look like, and hope to have a registration page early, January 2018, get everybody started signing up for the summer. But if you guys who attended this webinar today, we have a record of your attendance. If you end up joining us this summer for our program, we want to give you some credit for this session that you attended today. So sorry to be kind of vague and cryptic about this, but since this doesn't apply to everybody, if you're somebody who you're sure that this summer you're going to want to be one of our certified educators, drop us an email to jumpstart@ck12.org. We're going to give you an assignment that pairs with this session, and then that will kind of check that box off for the summer. You'll be ahead of the game going into summer 2018 certification round, because we'll give you credit for what you attended today. If none of that interests you, then that's why we don't want to overwhelm you guys with an assignment or anything right now. But any questions, jumpstart@ck12.org is awesome. We always ask for your feedback. We're continually trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work for webinars, what topics you guys need, what times, what days, what works. So if you have a minute, we really appreciate you going to this tiny URL that we created. That's CK12 Webinar 17. It's a general feedback form that you tell us what's working, what doesn't, and we read those and we appreciate it and we make changes accordingly. So that's about gonna wrap it up here. I want to just remind you that you are supported. We have an amazing support team. If you email support@ck12.org, that's the email address. If you're having technical issues, you need some help, you will reach a live person on the other end pretty quickly. We're happy to help you. And then on social media, follow us. I think probably Facebook and Twitter are our most active social media networks, but follow us, like us, tell others about your participation in today's webinar. We really appreciate that. So now that we're at the hour mark, those of you who need to sign off, thanks for attending today. Go ahead and sign off. Those of you who have questions, we're going to stick around and we're going to answer them. So Katie, back to you.
So it looks like we had a question on standards-based grading that was specifically about kind of how users have done that. So let me share my screen for a second. I'm going to show you a couple of things. One, we have this great testimonials page, and you can actually see clips of real users. We included some of these videos in today's webinar. So this is one from a math class on mastering concepts. That might be kind of that idea of competency-based education and really mastering concepts. We had some other ones that I was just kind of skimming this, looking forward for definitely hitting standards and requiring different pieces. So I would definitely check that out. You can find our testimonials page if you just scroll to the bottom of any of our pages, and you'll see here testimonials on CK-12. So that might give you some actual like personal contact and ideas from there. You also, here's a school from our, from our homepage. So if I actually went to CK-12 and looked at a particular school, I know this one has done some work on standards-based stuff. So if I clicked on this school in Tullahoma, Tennessee, they actually haven't done their science content yet. They're working on that. They did a number of other areas first. But if I scrolled all the way down there and I actually opened up one of their books, so here you can see kind of, they actually created history and English content and math content. But in their algebra book here, they have all the Tennessee State mathematics standards that are covered in this book and kind of broke it up as well. So that's a case where they're really trying to hit and customize and specifically target those areas. And then also we kind of mentioned briefly this idea of standards-based browser. So you could pull up any resources if you were teaching physical sciences in middle school. Here's your standard, and here are a bunch of different CK-12 concepts that work from this point, and I could click on any one of them and then assign the practice that went with that to my students. So I could assign this to my class and then see how they did on that. So that would be a way to kind of access and really track their progress specifically to meet standards. So hopefully that gave you a couple different options for kind of seeing that and going from there. And definitely feel free to, post. Lindsay mentioned our cafe. I think I mentioned it earlier in this webinar or the math one I did earlier today. But definitely feel free to post questions in the Jumpstart for Educators Cafe and see what other teachers have come up with as well. The last question that we have in there so far, and so feel free to add any other ones in as we go, because we'll stay on for a little bit afterwards, but we had a question about CK-12 being a nonprofit organization. Where can you find information if you want to kind of teach, especially elsewhere in the world? So we have a lot of international users. We certified a whole set of them this summer in that program. And one thing specifically for India, we actually partnered, and if you go to ck12.org/CBSE, that's specifically targeted for the standards in India. And those are kind of just pulled resources together there and kind of a starting place for you to work off of for India books in particular areas. So math, biology, chemistry, etc. So that might be a great resource. If you're in India, that usually pops up. I'm in the States right now, so I can get there by that direct link, ck12.org/CBSE. So feel free to kind of share these resources internationally as well. As we've said multiple times, everything on our site is free. We're a nonprofit. There is no charge to use our materials. So you're welcome to kind of share those and go from there.
Okay, it looks like we are out of questions. I want to thank everybody so much for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see you on a future webinar. But for now, we're going to sign off. So thank you.